welcome back. Today I am going to be doing a very long overdue book haul. The books in this book haul have been accumulating on my shelves since about April. I think my last book haul was my birthday book haul, which I did at the end of March or very beginning of April. Even though a lot of these books I acquired like back in the summer, way earlier in the year, I just haven't been in the mood to film a book haul. And I got home from work today and I thought, you know what, I'm kind of in the mood to film a book haul. So I collected all of the books that I think I haven't talked about on my channel yet that I bought since my last video, and there are 35 of them. What can I say? Honestly, there's probably more. I'm probably forgetting some books, or I'm thinking that I talked about some books in other videos and obviously I didn't, but 35, which is I think probably the biggest book haul I've ever done on my channel. I don't know for sure, but it feels like it probably is, and it pretty much runs the gambit in terms of genre. I've got nonfiction, I've got short stories, I've got mysteries, I've got contemporaries, I've got romance, I've got historical fiction, I've got fantasy, I've got sci-fi, I've got a little bit of everything. Like literally I think that pretty much all genres are covered. I have horror, I think, some classics even, just, you know, everything. Let's just jump right in. I'm going to start with the books that I have already read. So I've probably talked about them in previous videos. This first book, it feels a little bit like cheating to haul it because I am promptly going to unhaul it because I read it already. Obviously, I said I'm going to start with the books I already read. So I have read this book and I really didn't like it. And that is Switch by A.S. King. This is like a contemporary, speculative, kind of sci-fi story about a girl who lives in a world, well, she lives in our world, but in our world, time has stopped moving and nobody can explain it. Like the sun still rises and sets and they still go about their days, but the clocks everywhere have just stopped and nobody really knows like what the real time is or anything like that. And also she's going through some stuff with her family and she thinks that this mysterious switch in her house that her dad is obsessively building boxes around might have something to do with time stopping. So it's an interesting concept. What's the word I'm looking for? Interesting commentary, that's the word. Definitely like an interesting commentary on the pandemic and life stopping because of circumstances outside of our control. Ultimately, just a little bit too weird for me. Not my cup of tea, didn't enjoy it, but somebody out there probably will. So I'm going to give this to a local bookstore. Next, I've got the Hawthorne Legacy by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. I talked about this and Switch in the Magical Readathon vlogs that I posted back in September, I think was the month that happened. The Hawthorne Legacy is the sequel to the Inheritance games, which I read earlier this year and really enjoyed. It's about this girl who finds out that she gets an unexpected inheritance from this like business magnate in Texas, and she doesn't know who he is or why on earth she has inherited his billions and billions of dollars, but she is required to move to this estate and live there for a certain amount of time before she can actually like get the money. And it's all about her like trying to figure out why exactly she was chosen, and also it's about this family and the mysterious like people that are tied to this family. It's very like Knives Out-esque, and I enjoy that about it. It's got this kind of like fun game aspect to it as well, both the first book and the sequel, and so I would definitely recommend the series if you are interested. There is a third book coming out next year, which I'm highly anticipating, and I am glad that I read this. It was fun and I liked it, and I would recommend the series. I think it's underrated and I think more people should read it. Kind of along the same lines, I've got Truly Devious by Maureen Johnson, which is the first book in the Truly Devious series. I actually have the whole trilogy here. So the second book is The Vanishing Stair, and the third book is The Hand on the Wall. I haven't read the second and third books yet, but it feels a little bit wrong to talk about one and then talk about the other two later on in the video, so I'm just talking about them all together right now. This is a YA mystery series about a girl named Stevie Bell who gets accepted into this boarding school that is for people with like a specialty, a talent. Stevie has a passion for true crime, and so she applies to this school and she gets accepted, and a big draw of this school to her is that there is this mysterious kidnapping that happened in the 1930s revolving around the guy that founded the school. His daughter and wife went missing, and nobody has really ever been able to solve what happened. Nobody's ever been able to find the daughter, and nobody knows exactly who did this. And so Stevie moves to this boarding school where her one goal is to solve the crime. She thinks that she can solve the crime. Also, more crime starts happening when she gets there, of course, because it can't just be as simple as solving a 70-year-old murder. I think this is a really fun take on this genre. I didn't totally love the first book, and that's a big part of the reason why I haven't moved on to books 2 and 3 yet, but I do think that it is a fun interpretation of a mystery story, a boarding school story, and I am interested to continue on at some point. However, I do understand why this series is incredibly hyped and so incredibly loved, and I would recommend it if you like mysteries that are more, I don't know, like slow moving, character driven, not necessarily like edge of your seat, fast paced. This is more of just like a slow build. Obviously, this mystery is going to get solved over the course of 3 books, so it's not like an ultimately satisfying read, but it's still fun. Next up, I have 2 romance books that I read earlier this year and decided that I wanted my own physical copies of. So I got People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. This is like my favorite romance book I think that I've read in a very long time. It is the ultimate friends to lovers story, which this book is what made me realize that I absolutely love friends to lovers. I think it's the superior trope amongst romance tropes, and this is just a ton of fun, so endearing, very heartwarming, tackles some hard topics, but also is light and fluffy and fun at the same time. It's about Poppy and Alex. They became best friends in college, and they started a tradition where every summer or every year they would go on a trip together, and as the years go on, the trips get a little bit more involved. Poppy starts working for a travel magazine, and Alex and her relationship begins to change, and they haven't actually spoken to each other in a couple of years because of something that happened on one of their trips. And so this book is all about Poppy kind of throwing together a last-ditch trip to save their friendship, and along the way they might realize that there's more than friendship in this friendship. So super great, love it. I would highly recommend it. It's so hyped, like I'm sure if you haven't read it then you've at least heard of it, so I won't go on and on about it, but I do love it and I do think it's worth the hype, and I would definitely recommend it. The other romance book I've got here is Love in Other Words by Christina Lauren. I just read this one a couple months ago and I absolutely loved it. Also a really great friends to lovers story. This is about Macy and Elliot, who grew up kind of next door to each other. Macy and her father bought a lake house to go to in the summers and on weekends, and this lake house is next door to Elliot's house, and so when she's a teenager she and Elliot become friends and their relationship slowly evolves over the years. This is told in dual timelines from when Macy and Elliot first become friends and as their relationship forms, and also like present day after they've had a big falling out. They haven't spoken to each other in about 10 years and then they suddenly come back into each other's lives. I loved it. It's so good. Not as good as People We Meet on Vacation. Like that is the superior friends to lovers story, but this one is also really great. There was a sale going on Amazon a few weeks ago where you could buy 2 get the 3rd free or something like that, and I needed a 3rd book because I was specifically buying 2 other books, and I decided I wanted a physical copy of this so I could reread it whenever I want, and so I got it and I'm excited to have it. Even though I've already read it, I'm excited to have it. I feel like it is a book that I will reread for years to come. Okay, so those are all the books that I have here that I have already read, but I am going to talk about the book that I'm currently reading because I also just recently purchased this, actually in that same order with Love in Other Words, and that is In My Dreams I Hold a Knife by Ashley Winstead. This is a pretty popular, like super hyped book on BookTube right now. I've seen it everywhere, seen a ton of like rave reviews for it, and what pushed me to actually buy it was Kayla Books and Lala. She recently reviewed it and she loved it. She said it was the best thriller she'd read all year, and so I had to buy it. This is about a group of friends who, when they were in college, one of them was murdered and another one was accused of the murder, and this book actually takes place like 10 years after they've all left college. They are going back for their college reunion and somebody is out for revenge. Somebody thinks they know who the real killer was, and so they are looking to settle the score, I guess. But I'm enjoying it so far. I'm super intrigued and I am interested to see if it is worth all the hype that it's been getting lately. We'll just go ahead and talk about the 3rd book that I got in that Amazon order. I'm trying not to shop at Amazon right now. I really am not, but I really wanted to read In My Dreams I Hold a Knife, and it was out of stock everywhere near me and I couldn't find it online, so I decided to get it from Amazon. But the last book I did get from Amazon in that order was Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. I'm sorry, there's a glare from my ring light. This is another super hyped book on BookTube right now. It's been pretty popular this year. I've seen amazing reviews for it. I've seen that there is like some kind of like mind-blowing plot twist in the middle of this, and I just decided I wanted to buy it. I've never read anything by Andy Weir despite me owning The Martian for years. My brother has read all of his books and really enjoys him as an author. I really don't actually know much about this other than it's set in space, it follows an astronaut or a scientist or something, and he's probably gonna have to save the world, and there's some kind of crazy twist in the middle of it. So whenever I get around to reading it, I hope that I enjoy it. I have a feeling that I will, just based on all the reviews I've seen, but we'll see. Okay, I'm trying to tie all these books together for some reason. So from there, speaking of my brother, the next two books I have here, I actually didn't buy. My brother bought them, and he's already read them and he doesn't want them anymore. So he gave them to me. And that is the Well of Ascension and the Hero of Ages by Brandon Sanderson. These are hitting me in the face. These are books 2 and 3 in the Mistborn trilogy. I read The Final Empire, it's been several years now, like 2018 I think, and I really enjoyed it, but I have not gotten around to buying books 2 and 3 or reading them. And I think it was last year I lent The Final Empire to my brother, and he read it. He bought books 2 and 3 from Book Depository, and he's since read them. He's finished the trilogy, and I think he's also read the continuation trilogy set like however many years in the future. So I'm super far behind on something that I recommended to my brother, but he has read these, and so he didn't need them, so he gifted them to me. So I will finally be able to finish off this trilogy. Okay, how can we tie those books into something else? Fantasy? Let's just do the rest of my fantasy. So I've got Rule of Wolves here by Leigh Bardugo. This is the sequel to King of Scars, which is the first book in the Nikolai duology, the King of Scars duology. This actually came out in March, and I think it was March. Anyway, it came out way earlier this year, and I pre-ordered it. I might have actually already talked about it in a book haul now that I'm thinking about it. Anyway, this is the sequel to King of Scars, and I haven't read it yet. I did start reading it, but then I quickly realized that I really needed to freshen up on King of Scars because it had been a little while since I read that. And then Cole and I decided to read all of the Grisha books because we want to watch Shadow and Bone. No, I still have not watched Shadow and Bone on Netflix because Cole and I are slowly making our way through all of the Grisha verse books, and we're not quite done yet. So I figured I would just wait until we get around to King of Scars, reading that one together, and then I could just read Rule of Wolves after that. So this is probably going to be a book that I read next year at some point, because at this point I don't think we're going to finish all of the Grisha books before the end of the year. But I'm still excited about it nonetheless. I love Nikolai. He's my favorite character in the Grisha world, and I also really love Zoya, and I love that the series kind of follows them. I'm not in a super huge hurry though, because I do really want to freshen up on everything else before I get to this one. So this one will get read eventually. More sequels that I haven't gotten around to yet. I've got A Gathering of Shadows by V.E. Schwab. This is the sequel to A Darker Shade of Magic, which was one of the first books I read in 2021, and I really enjoyed it, like way more than I thought I would. I decided to finally buy the sequel, and I still haven't read it, but I'm going to. This is probably like maybe the next book I'm gonna pick up, only because I keep like kind of being drawn to it. I keep looking at it on my shelves and keep thinking like, I think it's time to finally read that. And I definitely would like to read it soon-ish so I can get the third book and read it as well and just finish off this trilogy altogether, because I don't want this one to be on my TBR for like more than a year. This is a super popular fantasy series. If you haven't heard of it, I would be shocked. But this is about Kel. He is an Antari, I believe is the word, I can't remember, which means he's able to travel between these parallel Londons. In the first book, he meets a pirate named Delilah Bard who is desperate to escape her circumstances, and Kel helps her do that, and he goes on this adventure to figure out what this magical artifact is that they have found. And I think in this one there's a competition of some kind, so I'm interested to see how that goes, but still haven't gotten around to it yet. So hopefully, fingers crossed, that happens soon, but we'll see. The other fantasy sequel that I haven't gotten around to yet is Lightbringer by Claire Legrand. This is the third book in the Imperium trilogy. The first book being Furyborn, the second book being Kingsbane. The reason I haven't read book 3 is because I haven't read book 2 yet. I know, it's sad. Like, this series has been on my TBR for over a year at this point, and I still haven't gotten around to reading it, and I need to do it. I absolutely loved Furyborn. It was an unexpected favorite book for me, and I've been anticipating finishing this trilogy. I've heard such great things about where the series goes, and so I'm excited to see where it goes. If you don't know, this series is set in a world where there is this prophecy saying that there will be a Blood Queen and a Sun Queen. The Blood Queen will destroy the world, and the Sun Queen will save it, and it follows two women in like 1,000-year apart timelines and how their lives are tied to this prophecy. The first book is really great, and I anticipate the rest of them being great too, so we'll just have to wait and see how it goes when I finally get around to reading them. Okay, the next few books are all the first books in fantasy or some kind of YA series. I've got Ray Bear by Jordan Ifueko, which is the first book in the Ray Bear duology. I believe there's only 2 books in this series, and the second book just came out, so it's the perfect time to get into the series. This is, I think, a West African inspired fantasy. I truly don't know that much about it. The only reason I bought this is because it is so incredibly hyped. I have literally only seen 5-star reviews for it, and I just have a feeling I'm going to love it. I have no basis for that feeling except for it's just a gut feeling that I'm going to love it. So hopefully I will. Hopefully I'll actually get around to reading it soon, and I can tell you if it's as good as everybody says it is. But if a book is so well loved by like everyone, like if it's a universally well loved book, then how can I not love it? Like I'm sure it's going to happen. Okay, the next book is a book that I really never anticipated buying, but it was at Walmart for $4 the other day, and I just had a bad day, so I was like, I'm gonna buy myself a couple of books, and this was one of the ones that I picked up. So I got The Beautiful by Renee Audier. She is the author of the Wrath and the Dawn duology, which I read a few years ago and I really enjoyed. I think that's such an underrated fantasy duology. This is like the comeback of vampires, is what I've been told. I don't really know a ton about it, to be honest. It's set in the 1870s in New Orleans, and it's about vampires. And that's all I know. This is a really interesting copy of the book. I don't know if all the paperbacks look like this. I've never seen it like this, but this is so floppy. Like, that was a big part of the reason why I picked it up. Also, it was $4. So even if I don't like it, I didn't really invest that much money into it, so I'm not like that concerned about it. She did write one of my favorite like underrated fantasy duologies, so I'm just assuming this is going to be good too. It doesn't honestly have the best reviews, but I kind of don't care. Like, I have a feeling it's gonna be all right, and I'm excited to see if my feeling is correct or not. The next book is also the first book in a fantasy series, and I honestly wasn't going to buy this book, but it was also at Walmart for super cheap. It was like $10, I think. And so I just bit the bullet and I bought it because it's a book that I really want to read, and I have a really fun video planned for this plus some other books, and that is These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong. This is, from my understanding, a Romeo and Juliet retelling set in 1920s Shanghai, and I've heard amazing things about it. Also, I think the sequel to this book is getting ready to come out, and I just feel like it's the perfect time to get into this series. If the second book's about to come out, then I need to read the first one. I have seen amazing reviews for this. So many people have raved about it, so I just think I'm going to enjoy it, and I am glad to have it on my shelves now. Okay, the next book is kind of fantasy, I think. This one I bought because I was planning on reading all of the books from the Women's Prize for Fiction shortlist, and I did not manage to make that happen. I got Purenessie, I think is how you say it, by Susanna Clarke. This is a super weird book that I don't think I could even describe if I tried. I've read the first chapter of it. I actually did like a little try a chapter thing for a vlog that never ended up getting posted, and I thought it was weird but kind of cool, and I will be continuing on with it at some point. The problem is this book is pretty dense. Like, for a fantasy that's got this like whimsical feel to it, it's like more of a dense read, and I just wasn't in the headspace to be doing that. It's not too long. I think it'll be a quick read once I like really like dive into it, but like I said, just it was a little bit, it was going over my head a little bit at first, so I had to put it down. This book did actually end up winning the Women's Prize for Fiction, so I'm super excited to read it. Like, that just like leveled up my excitement to read it. I'm just not quite ready to read it yet, so hopefully that'll happen soon. So next up I have a collection of short stories, and that is Exhalation by Ted Chiang. This is the author of the story that the movie Arrival is based on. I don't believe that story is in this collection. I think that's in his other collection. The reason I bought this is because Claire from Claire Reads Books, she raved about this collection, and I'm not usually a big short story fan, but I have been collecting short story collections all year long, and I'm planning on doing a like project in 2022 where I read a bunch of short story collections. I believe that the majority of these stories are like sci-fi, like surrealist type of stories, and I'm super excited about that. I just think I'm going to enjoy it. I don't know why. I really love the movie Arrival. It's like one of my favorite movies, and if he wrote the story that movie's based on, then I have no doubt that this is going to be excellent. So excited about reading this in 2022. The other book that I picked up that day was Beowulf, translated by Maria Devana Headley. This is like a new translation. The big reason that I picked this up is because the very first line is, "Bro, tell me we still know how to speak of kings." If the first word in your translation of Beowulf is bro, I gotta read it, you know? I studied Beowulf to death in college. My senior seminar teacher was kind of obsessed with Beowulf. He taught like the Middle English and like Old English classes for the English department, and I took him for like 3 different classes, and one of the semesters, actually multiple of the semesters, we studied Beowulf intensely, and I just wish that this book had been out when we were studying it, because I think it would have been a super interesting discussion piece, because it's such a different translation. I am excited to get into this. I haven't read it yet because I think it's going to be something that I'm going to want to really like dive into, maybe with like a highlighter, make some notes, because I know the story of Beowulf so well that I feel like I'm just gonna want to like almost study it. So I'm excited to get to this again, probably next year, because I just don't see myself like wanting to pick this up before the end of the year. I think it's gonna be great once I get around to it, so I'm excited to read it. Another classic-ish type story, I don't know if this is like fully a classic, maybe more of like a modern classic, is Gilead by Marilynne Robinson. This is the first book in what I believe is a 4 or 5 book series all about this family in like the 60s, and I believe it has a lot of like religious overtones. This is just a book that I've had on my TBR for a while, and I've seen a lot of reviews for it, and they just recently released these new covers. The entire series got this like cover redesign, and this just like drew me in. Like I wanted to pick it up, so I got it, and I'm gonna read it eventually. I'm gonna take this Target sticker off. The main reason I think I got this when I did was because Target was doing a buy one get one free, or buy one get one 50% off, or something along those lines. Some kind of deal going on at Target where a bunch of books were super discounted, and this was on the list. And because it had been on my TBR for so long, I just decided to like go ahead and buy it, even though I don't know a ton about it. I'm excited to read it. I'm excited to read all the books that I haven't read that are in this video. Next, I've got Clara and the Sun by Kazuo Ishiguro, which I also got because of the Target thing that was going on where you like get a book for $5 or something. This one I literally know nothing about. I think it's about AI, but I really don't know much about it. All I do know is that a bunch of people that I have followed on Instagram and Goodreads and YouTube for a lot of years gave this book 5 stars, and I just am easily influenced, so I picked it up. I have read a Kazuo Ishiguro book in the past. What is it called? Never Let Me Go. It's Never Let Me Go, and it's one of my favorite books. I couldn't remember the title, but it is one of my favorite books. So I think that I will like this, but obviously we'll just have to wait and see because I haven't read it yet. Next up, I've got The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones. This is 100% an influenced by BookTube purchase because I don't really typically reach for horror. I'm not really 100% sure if this is something that I will even like, but I do see here a tale of revenge, cultural identity, and the cost of breaking from tradition in this tradition, that's the word, in this latest novel from the Jordan Peele of horror literature, Stephen Graham Jones. I am so into Jordan Peele's movies. I think he is a genius, and I didn't realize that that comparison was being made between the two, but now I'm even more excited. I really don't know a single thing about this book, but I think I'm gonna like it. So I've got it, and hopefully I will actually like it. Hopefully the hype will be real for this one and I will like it as much as everybody else seems to. I really thought I was getting close to being done with this book haul, but I still have so many books to talk about. Next up, I've got When No One Was Watching by Alyssa Cole. This is a mystery thriller romance. I really don't know if it's a romance or not, but Alyssa Cole is a romance author, and I believe this is her first foray into like the more mystery thriller genre. It's about a girl who lives in a Brooklyn neighborhood who notices that a lot of her neighbors of color have gone missing, and so she decides to investigate, and I believe it's all about the like harm of gentrification, and also she's trying to solve this mystery about where all of her neighbors are disappearing to. I've only heard good things about it. I've seen a ton of great things about it on BookTube, but I haven't gotten around to reading it. And the majority of that reason is that I suck at picking up the books that I buy. This will be a book that I hopefully read soon, but I say that about everything, and honestly, everything can't be a book that I read soon. Some of them are gonna get pushed down the line. So we'll see when I get around to reading this, but fingers crossed, it's soon. The next book I have here, another one that I've seen really great reviews for on BookTube, and that is a big part of the reason why I picked it up, is My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. This one, from what I understand, is a little bit more harder hitting. It's like a heavier topic book. It's about a girl who didn't really realize that she was in an abusive like grooming relationship when she was in high school, and now it's several years later, and the teacher that she loved so dearly that ended up being like abusive to her is being accused of doing the same thing to another student, and she is having to kind of grapple with the fact that actually she was in an abusive relationship with this man. I think it's going to be an interesting look at that, and I'm not sure honestly how I'm going to feel about it. I've heard really great things about it, but I've also heard that it's just a little bit difficult to read and it's not a book for everyone. So it will be interesting to see how I feel about it. I would not recommend picking it up, even though I haven't even read it yet. I wouldn't recommend picking it up if you think that it might be too difficult or if it would at all trigger you. But I am interested to see how I feel about it. So again, hopefully I'll get around to reading this one soon. The next book I have to talk about is a book that I bought kind of stemming from or inspired by the video I did earlier this year where I read only millennial fiction books for an entire month. This is one that I have seen pop up on like millennial fiction recommendation lists since I did that video, and it's another one that I've seen reviewed on BookTube very highly. That is White Ivy by Susie Yang. I actually really don't know anything about this book. I just think it's about an immigrant family. I think they move from China. Yeah, Chinese immigrant who grows up in Massachusetts. Not only is she like grappling with the millennial experience, but also the immigrant experience. And I think she falls in love with a boy that her family doesn't approve of. And I'm just very interested to see how I feel about it. I think it's gonna be good. I've seen, like I said, great reviews for it. And it's a book that I've seen pop up so much since I did that millennial fiction video. So maybe I'll do a sequel to that video and I'll read more and determine even more so if millennial fiction is or isn't something that I tend to enjoy. All right, the next book I've got here is The Four Winds by Kristen Hanna. This is a historical fiction book. I think it's about a mother and daughter who are living in the 20s in Texas. Don't really know a ton about it. The end pages are, oh, you can't even see it. It's not even worth showing. They're gorgeous. I don't know what possessed me to buy this book because I have tried to read Kristen Hanna books in the past and have DNF'd them multiple times. I've tried to read The Nightingale, I think 3 times, and I haven't been able to get through it. I've tried to read some of her older books and have never been able to get through one. But for some reason, I bought this at Walmart, and we'll see if I actually manage to get through it. I've heard and seen some not so great reviews for it since I bought it, which was months and months ago, and I haven't even tried to read it or anything. So we'll see if it actually manages to get read or if it's just gonna end up in an unhaul in a few years. But it was another one of those like having a bad day, just decided to buy something kind of purchases. Who knows? It might be like my favorite thing that I've ever read. One can only hope. Moving on to even more historical fiction, the next book I've got here is Songs in Ursa Major by Emma Brody. I bought this because I saw a TikTok where they were recommending books to read if you have read XYZ Taylor Jenkins Reid books, and this was the book that the girl recommended if you've read Daisy Jones and the Six, if you read and enjoyed Daisy Jones and the Six, which I did. It's my favorite of her books, and so I decided to buy it, and haven't read it yet, but also haven't seen a ton of reviews for this one. I think it's about a guy and a girl who fall in love in the 60s, and they write music together, and I think it's going to be sweet, and I'm excited about it. So we'll see when/if I get around to it. I actually kind of have a potential, maybe readers also enjoyed video that I'm going to do next year that is like centered around books that are similar to Daisy Jones and the Six. So it may be getting read then, but we will have to wait and see. Speaking of Taylor Jenkins Reid, I also have Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This is her newest book that came out earlier this year, and I haven't gotten around to reading it. And the main reason for that is, I don't know. I don't know why. I have been excited to pick this book up since I heard about it, since like the very first time I saw it listed as a new book to add on Goodreads, since the very first time I saw Taylor Jenkins Reid talk about what the synopsis of this book is. I've been excited about it, and here we are like months after it came out and I still haven't read it, and I can't tell you why, except for that life is hard and I just don't want to read this at the wrong time. It's about this like surfing family in, I believe, the 80s, and it's all about a party that they throw every year, and I believe it's set all in the course of one day, and it also loosely ties to Evelyn Hugo and Daisy Jones. They're all kind of set in the same universe because I believe there are some overlapping characters in this book, and so I think I'm gonna like it. I haven't disliked anything that Taylor Jenkins Reid has written, so I can't possibly not like it, you know, like there's no way, like I'm gonna like it. Next up, I have another little short story collection, and that is Blackout by Danielle Clayton, Tiffany D. Jackson, Nick Stone, Angie Thomas, Ashley Woodfolk, and Nicola Yoon. This is a collection of interconnected short stories that all take place during the course of one night during a blackout in New York City, and I bought this because a couple people recently read it and said it was really good, and even though I'm really not feeling like reaching for YA contemporary much lately, I have read and enjoyed a lot of the authors in this collection, and I think that this one will be a fun one to read. It's also super short. Also, the like naked hardback is so cool, very colorful. like it. Yeah, I don't know. I just think it's gonna be great, and I'm excited to get to it, and hopefully I will soon. The next book I've got here is a sci-fi story, a sci-fi book, and that is A History of What Comes Next by Sylvain Neuvel. Another one that I picked up basically because I saw a couple people read it and say it was really great. I have been wanting to read a full-length novel by Sylvain Neuvel ever since I read The Test. This is all about a group of women who I believe go to space, or like a family that helps during the space race, and it's the first in a series, a Take Them to the Stars novel. So I'm excited about this. I really want to read Sleeping Giants, which is what I have heard is the adult comparison to the Illuminae files, but I went to the bookstore a couple like last month, and Barnes & Noble was doing like a bunch of books for 50% off, so I picked this one up that day because this one was 50% off. The next book I've got here is another one that is 1000% influenced by BookTube, and that is House of Leaves by Mark Z. Danielewski. I'm just so intimidated by the size and like how weird the formatting is. I tried to read this on a road trip, which was not a good idea because it's, first of all, I get car sick, so I don't know why I ever thought that I would be able to read it in the car. And second of all, this is way too complicated to just read while you're driving. Like, you have to have a notepad out to like take notes, or like some sticky notes or something, and I just wasn't prepared for that. So I am gonna read this. I'm gonna like dedicate some time to it because it's gonna take me a little bit of time, but I'm gonna read it and I'm probably gonna love it, but we'll just have to wait and see because I don't know when I'm actually gonna get around to it. Okay, so that's all the fiction that I bought recently, but I do have a couple of nonfiction books that I have bought that I'm excited about. Nonfiction is something that I read a lot of in the last couple of years, and then this year basically didn't read any, but I have acquired a few, and I'm gonna try to read them in November for Nonfiction November. So the first of those, actually the first two that I got 3 total. The first 2 I've got here are Becoming by Michelle Obama and A Promised Land by Barack Obama. I love the Obamas. Big fan. Not a fan because they're political figures and you're not supposed to be fans of political figures, but I am a great admirer of the Obamas. Specifically Michelle, I think she is just an incredibly intelligent and stunning woman, and I am forever inspired by her. And I have owned the Becoming audiobook for a very long time, and then that same time that I was doing all those like Target like buy things for 50% off or whatever the heck that they were doing, I bought this because it was $8. And then obviously the Barack Obama biography, not a biography, his autobiography came out last year, and I got it for super cheap at Target that same time. This is massive, like it's like 600 or 700 pages, and I think it's going to be super great. Like, I'm very excited about reading it, but I just haven't gotten around to it yet. And I think I might try to listen to one of these in November on audio because I have the audiobooks for both, but I also just wanted to have the physical copies for my shelves as well. And also there's like pictures in both of these, and there might be specific things that I want to go back and reference, like highlight and stuff if I'm listening to them. So I acquired both, and I love them both. They're so stunning together on my shelves, and I'm glad that I have them. And then the last book in this book haul, number 35, is You Never Forget Your First by Alexis Coe, which is a biography of George Washington that I've heard is such a great comprehensive biography. I am super into presidential biographies, or I'm into the idea of them, but usually they're huge, like thousands of pages and just a little bit too much. And then I saw a ton of reviews for this, and I heard that it is not only like super great, comprehensive, short, but it's also supposedly funny. And I just love a funny book. Like, if I'm gonna read something, if I'm gonna read some historical nonfiction, I need it to be entertaining and not like super like textbooky, and that's what I've heard this is. Entertaining, funny, not textbooky. So I'm excited about this. Like, this is one that I definitely will be reading in November. You heard it here right in this moment first. I will be reading this book in November, and I think it's going to start a really great journey of me dipping my toes into more presidential biographies in the future. You never forget your first. Hopefully I won't forget my first presidential biography, I mean. So that is my giant, huge catch-up book haul. This video, I'm sure it was way too long, and if you stuck around to the end, I appreciate you so wholeheartedly. I just am already imagining probably like at least 30 minutes. If you have read any of the books that I mentioned in this video, I know there were so many of them. I'll try to leave links to everything in the description if I remember, if I have enough characters in my description page. I will try to link them all, but if there's any books that I mentioned in this video that you've read and you have specific opinions that you'd like to share with me, I would absolutely love that. If there are any of these books that you want to see me review sooner rather than later, I would absolutely love that. Also, let me know some books that you bought recently, or a book that you're excited to buy soon, or like maybe this is the next book you're gonna read. I'd really love to know that as well. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video as long as it was, and I will see you again very soon. Bye!